Hi, friends. So today, for today's edition of Sport and Local, we are talking to Matthew Sardo. We're going to talk about his Chicago connection, the comic convention that he started. That I really like the concept of it, and we're going to get into that. We're going to get into like the podcast that he runs also, and just talk about nerdy stuff in comic books. So Matthew or Matt, which would you prefer?
What's funny is, I think women call me Matthew and guys call me Matt. So we'll
Okay.
just stick with Matt.
All right, sounds good. So Matt, let everyone know like your connection to Chicago, because I know you don't live here anymore, but like I'm still you're Chicago adjacent. We'll just put it that way. So let us know about like your connection here and your store, and then how we got into the Indie Comics Creator Con.
I had 10 amazing years in Chicago, and it was some of the best times. I have some amazing friends, like best friends, from Chicago in that 10 years. And I was a bartender at Giordano's downtown, and that's where everything started. And then I had a comic book store for 5 years, from 2006 to 2011, Chicago Comic Vault, Montrose and Ashland. And I met my wife in Chicago. We got married, and then we moved away. But no, it's Chicago's awesome. I had Mike Ditka bless my wedding. I'm a huge Bears fan. I used to go to games on Sundays. Uh, I used to just wake up, hop on the red line, and then go to games, and then walk to work and bartend at Giordano's. I was full Chicago, and I still am, and I love it, and I miss the city so much.
It's funny because the Comic Vault, when I would drive my wife to work, we would take Montrose straight down to Lakeshore, and I remember seeing it like when it like as it was being built and as it opened, and every time I'll come back, it was still like 8 in the morning, so I'm like I can't, it's not open yet. But then when I finally did get a chance to go there a couple times, like I think I bought a long box, I bought a couple books there. But every now and then, like the days that I didn't want to go, there's always parking. And then the days where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go there today, there's like no parking. But that's Chicago. I mean, every time you don't think of going to a place, it's always like that.
Yeah, no, running a retail establishment in Chicago during that time period was crazy. With construction, they remodeled the train stop as well, and we I felt like we were fighting everything as a retailer. Whether it was weather, construction, economic depression, all these things. But it did make me creative. It made me very creative. We had ZombieCon, we had WinterCon. We did so many cool. We saw The Dark Knight a week before it came out, and then Warner Brothers eventually called me with lawyers yelling at me and stuff. But that's way, the statute of limitations is way past on that time. But I was always very creative on the events, and like when we did ZombieCon, I had the text message chain, and I was like, "Hey guys, call this news station and tell them there's something crazy going on in Montrose and Ashland." And everybody would call or message, and a news crew would show up like an hour later, like, "What's going on?" I was like, blah blah, and eventually, the news stations caught on to my shtick, but it worked. In the pre, in the analog days, it worked. Now there's like a messaging system, and you got to leave a message, and a form that you fill out. You can't get past them.
Yeah, but due to that creativity, though, it led you to create the Indie Comics Creator Con, which is it's a complete it's more. I think it reminds me. It's kind of like BelaCon in the way that he does it here. It's just comic creators, one room, nothing too glitzy or fancy. We're just going to talk about comics. We're just selling comics, and we're going to spotlight certain writers and certain creators. And that's what you're basically doing with this, which is pretty awesome because it's like you have over. I looked on the site recently; it's like over 175
Yeah, at
guests.
last count, we're like right at 175. I think we peaked at like 182, and a few people kind of come and go. Like this last 2 weeks is kind of crazy before the show. We're like, because we have 135 tables in on the third floor of Southern Connecticut State University, their student center, and I cut off applications at 300. Like we had 300 creators apply, and when I say creators, the the requirement for being tabling at the show is that you have to be creating a comic book. Whether it's something that you stapled, like an 8-page book that you staple together, or if you're, publishing an Image or a bigger publisher, from there, like you have to be creating a comic book. Like there's not like print guys or Funko Pops or any like like I've had a lot of like 3D printer people, apply like, makers fair kind of people as well. These are all amazing creators, but like our focus is on the comic book creators. And it's really cool that there's, because I'm making a niche within a niche within a niche, like indie comics, convention. But to see that there are that many creators looking for this type of show, really encourages me and really motivates me to like deliver an amazing show.
Yeah, you kind of touched upon it a little, but like for those that don't know or have never heard of the Indie Comic Creator Con, like what would you say? Like how would you describe it to them if you were telling them about it? What's like the elevator pitch? I guess you could say.
So it's like for creators by creators. Like I've produced comic books, I've been in the comic book industry, and everybody else who's helped me on this has produced comic books. So the big thing is it's for creators by creators. I do pitch it as like a hybrid conference slash convention, because it's still intimate enough where like the creators can network and they can learn. A lot of the panels are geared towards creators and future creators. And there were so many like anthology books that came out of the first year because people met and like worked together and stuff. And then I also, come from retail and marketing and everything like that. Like I also offer like advice, like how do you table? What are you doing? How are because basically creators spend all their time and emotion creating a comic book. And then they're like, oh man, now I got to go sell this. And like it's hard. And I do my best to try to help them, facilitate that.
Yeah, and then that's the thing too. Is I mean, like you're saying, like they put all this blood, sweat, and tears into this. But then there's that other aspect of, yeah, I got to go out now and pitch it to people. While, they love it and may have like one or two people in their, tight knit group that love it. When you're sitting there at the table and people just walk by and like, just keep walking, it's crushing in a way. But I like that you said it's just for creators by creators because everybody there is supporting each other and helping each other. I know like certain cons when I go to, I'm talking to someone at their table, and then they're like, "Oh, have you looked at this person's table too?" Instead of just focusing on let me, show you my stuff, let me tell you about the people around me. And it seems like that's what this is too, which is great that everyone is supporting each other and pumping each other up.
Yeah, I mean, and that's when I had the comic book shop, if anybody, I tried to keep it to where it was like, if you walked into my store, I wanted to find the book that you needed or wanted. And because comic books are a spectrum, there isn't, just superheroes, there isn't just slice of life. Like, there is a spectrum of books, and like, I can find the perfect book for you. And I don't want you to be intimidated from coming into the store and be like, oh, I don't know anything about comic books. And I tried to make it as friendly as possible. And I'm trying to do that on the convention level, to where like when I pick the creators that are coming, I want to have that spectrum of books so that whoever walks through the door and comes to the show, they're going to find a book. They're going to meet a creator that connects with them. Because I always talk to, like, I used to go to the Beat Kitchen to see music, and everybody I saw at the Beat Kitchen, I became a passionate fan for them. If it aren't famous and just keep trugging along in music, but like I love them so much, and it was because like I was at this nice intimate show, I met them, and it just, you want to support the artist, and that's what I'm trying to recreate certain things that motivate me as as a buyer, I guess.
Yeah, no, I completely get that because like um when you have that one-on-one time with that creator, like because sometimes there's like they're by themselves sitting there, no one's like talking to them, and then you start the conversation, they tell you about their books, and by the end of it you're like, you know what, I'm gonna buy 3 or 4 of your books. And then it creates that connection with them because then that person might go home, follow them on Instagram or on any other social medias, and then become that lifelong fan. And at the next concert, or not next concert, but
Yeah.
the next time they see him at a con, it's like that friendship's established. It's like, oh, what do you got new now? So it's always great to get that connection with the creators, and then and especially too. I mean, like a lot of cons are now like 3 or 4 days, and by like the second or third day, you're just like you're spent because you've been walking around and you can't do anything. But I like it that yours is just like 1 day, so you get that time to really focus on someone and focus on what's around everybody.
Yeah, I mean, because it's again, it's the focus is the creator, and I know a lot of creators, probably have a job, and I know for myself when I was like doing MegaCon or C2E2, like I'd have to take work time off of work to go to the convention or table at a convention. So I'm trying to, again, like keep costs down for tables. So the barrier to entry I want to keep low. And then also I don't want to take away from either whether it's your family time or your work time as well. So it's again, I took a lot of time thinking about like all these different aspects of like what a creator goes through setting up at a convention. And I was like, how can I help you? And that's been like, the focus.
Yeah, and that's like again another great thing too. And also too, I mean the tickets are a great price for it's between $5 to $8 to attend. And then, like I said, you're going to see all these different creators. So when you had the idea of creating this, like what was the one thing that you thought would be the most difficult to do, but it turned out being somewhat easy?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would think it would be like recruiting the bigger names. When I talk to people about the show, I mean, like, it's an indie show, so I have a limited budget, but like, we do pay for some bigger, travel and hotel expenses and things like that that conventions do. Um, but after the first show, I was getting emails from bigger names being like, "Hey, can I do your show? I heard it was really good and stuff." So that was encouraging and stuff. And Eric Powell, if you're listening, I really want you to come to my show next year. Like he's my white whale. I really want Eric Powell, the goon, to come to my show because
But yeah, I mean, like hopefully this expands more because I would love to talk to more creators or artists and have them go out there. And then by them seeing this and then seeing your this episode, they'll be like, maybe I should reach out to Matt and get on his comic convention. So hopefully this whole builds like a whole community. But again, like had since you've had this since the first one, which artists have been like your regulars or they're like, I enjoyed this year, I'll see you next year.
that's been the tough part because there's almost everybody from the first show wanted to come back. And, I mean, that show was about 90 creators and, about 90 tables. So, we added another 45 tables. And so there's there's a really cool New England scene. And this I moved to Connecticut in 2022. So I'm still getting acclimated in the Connecticut scene and the New England scene. But Tony McMillan has become, he's an amazing creator, and I'd almost start putting him in the friend category. He lives in Boston, and I've interviewed him a few times. He's been at my show, and he designed the poster for this year and last year for it as well. Monty Keene from Brooklyn, completely on the other end of the spectrum as Tony. He does like bootleg Spider-Man, and he's working on a bootleg Wolverine. Uh, he's really big into the old school, like 40s, 50s superhero era kind of thing. So how he pitches himself is in that as well. So those two are like two amazing characters that I really enjoy, um, like as a friendship and as a creator, and those two relationships started with this show. And
That's awesome. That's great to hear. And it's cool that because of that friendship, they're creating the stuff for you, like with like the posters. Which is I'm gonna definitely have like a pop up while we talk about it because it's a cool thing to see. Um, I noticed because I was looking also at the sponsors this year, and then you have Dark Horse this year, which is kind of I want to say it's a big label, or is it label maybe for comics? But it's like, how did you get them to be on board with this, or is this like this isn't the first time they've been on here, or is it?
No, this is the first time that they've been the sponsor of the show. Last year we had Comics Wellspring, which is a printer company, and they work with indie creators, and that's another like I was putting the show on. We did a Kickstarter to launch the show, and so I was putting the show on, and then a creator was like, "Hey, Comics Wellspring wants to talk to you about sponsoring," and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." Like, and so they've been a huge advocate for us. And then, because I owned a store and, I ran Monkey Fighting Robots is still going on. Our 10th anniversary is this year. The editor in chief, Anthony Composto, he's kind of taken over for me since I'm doing this. But, because of owning a store and then running Monkeys Fighting Robots, which focused on comic books, I have relationships and connections with all the publishers. And I talked to, the people I know at Dark Horse, and I was like, "Hey, I'm doing this event. Like, do you wanna, like, help out?" And they were like, "Sure." And I was like, "Thank you so much." It was literally that simple. I was like, "Oh, wow, thank you so much," and I'm very appreciative of what they have brought to the table, and I'm hoping that, next year it kinda just keeps going and growing, and that's the goal, is to keep it growing, I think next year will be a nonprofit, and I think that'll be move it to the next level of, like, sponsorships and everything like that. So, like, this is, it's an exciting time. I'm really excited for this year and to see how we grow and where it goes from there.
Yeah, no, yeah, because like I said, I was looking through that. I did see which is at the Comic Wellspring. I saw Dark Horse on there, Athenium Comic Art. There's a lot of cool people there, and then like artists too. Like the one that I kind of missed that I didn't get a chance to talk to her recently is Heather Antos, and I know she's going to be there. That's another thing too. Like someone was like, "Oh, you need to go talk to her because she created Gwenpool," and I was like, "Oh, yeah." But by the time I went to her table, she was gone. I was like, "Damn it!" But yeah, list to us. I mean, like I said, there's over 175 people out there. Um, so I mean, obviously, I don't want to say like who's your favorite that's going to be there, but for those that are not familiar with a lot of these creators, like who would you say that when they get there they should go and check out?
So, Dean Haspel is one of the guest and honors. And so you got Dean Haspel, Jim Rugg, Tom Scioli, Mike Martz, Heather Antos, uh, Ken Landgraf, and Paul Kirshner. Those are like the headliners of the show, and they fit like a spectrum of the indie scene. Where Dean's been a lifer in it, and Brooklyn based, and he's been kickstarting and crowdfunding and doing a lot of amazing things there. Jim Rugg, part of the cartoonist kayfabe videos, and he has a whole bunch. He did like whole grand design, and he was instrumental in like kind of the DIY publishing of like how to do stuff and how to fold and staple and helping creators kind of do some creative things. And he's done a lot of Kickstarters as well that have been really successful. He's part of like the Pittsburgh scene, and Tom Scioli is another Pittsburgh creator that I think he's doing the Godzilla books, the Godzilla masterpiece. Because I know that Godzilla in Chicago is having a good week this week.
Yeah, I think that's in my pull box, so I gotta go. I gotta go to my local store and pick it up. And I think they're doing a show today too, or somewhere in the city for that. I know earlier you were talking about the panels. You said panels that matter. Explain to us like what would that mean, and like what are some of the panels that people can attend while they're there?
Uh, so one of the panels is like, okay, it's day one. You're deciding to make a comic book. Where do you go from there? So we're starting at like the ground level, and there's that one of like how you go through like actually making a comic book. If you want to like put a team together or do it yourself or print it and all these other things, and you go down that path. There's another panel of like how to pitch to comic book stores to carry your books and all those aspects. And then there's another panel with Heather Antos and Mike Martz because I thought it was really important to bring in some editors this year. Kind of the conference model and what they're looking for as editors, like when you're pitching stories and you're doing this, and so to kind of give some advice that way, kind of go behind the scenes of like, hey, what are you looking for? What works? What doesn't work? Like when you do a portfolio review, like what are you looking for? Because I think a lot of people just show up with like splash pages of like, hey, look at this amazing artwork that I did, where like they don't show storytelling. They just show so it's like, oh yeah, you need to show panel work, you need to show storytelling and how you guide the eye. And I'm not the best person to talk about this, but I mean, like that's why I'm bringing experts in. But like, you know, so those are the kind of things like, how to start out on your own, how to pitch stores, and then like what editors are looking for things. And then I think we're gonna have like some fun ones where like there'll be some we'll have a couple creators in the room, and we'll give them a prompt and for like a panel design, and then two other creators will like commentate sports style of it, and they'll go back and forth. So there's some like fun panels as well.
That's fun. That sounds great. Um, and you never know, like because of these panels, since they're so like I guess you could say ground level of what you're learning. In a couple of years, we'll have someone that's like, yeah, I learned all this from your con, and now look at they have a table at your booth at your show. So that'll be pretty cool to hear like a success story like that, or someone that's just starting out. Um,
Yeah, no, I think we have like 5 or 6 high school art teachers that are tabling,
oh,
and I've sent them all free tickets for their class. So I'm really hoping that there are at least like, you know, 5 teachers worth of students showing up and not running around, but like, exploring the show and getting inspired and being like, "Oh, my teachers really do something." You know what I mean? Like they're not just,
yeah,
so I'm really excited for that because I had this one kid, one of my friends is an art teacher and he'll be tabling. But last year he's like, "Hey man, I got this kid. He's really introverted. He might be on the spectrum a little bit, but he's really talented." And I was like, "Oh, sure, send him to the show. I'll give him free ticket and stuff like that." And so he came up, head down, handed me a ticket, and he went through the show. And I don't think I ever saw him again. And then maybe like 2 or 3 weeks later, I get this email from his teacher, and he's like, "Oh my god, so and so had an amazing time. He's opened up, just crazy excited, just been, talking about it the whole time." And so I put a care package together and sent him some more books and stuff. And I'm really excited to see him this year, a year later, and where he is as a creator and where he is on his journey and stuff. And so those are the cool things. I like being on people's timelines for just a little bit and then watching them succeed afterwards.
yeah. Now that's awesome because I mean, I work in a school too, so I know there's those kids that are always like super quiet, but once they see something that reaches them in a certain way, they start that light starts shining from them, and they start getting into things. So that was really cool. I would really love to hear like if he does if he does show up, like what happens this year. Or maybe he'll have some artwork for you to share with you while you're there, which would be pretty cool. Um, but none of this would have happened, I guess you could say, if it wasn't for your love of comics. So what was it? What was that first comic that you ever got that like started that bug for you? Oh, I want to get into these books, or I want to start reading this stuff. What was like that first comic that you ever that did that for you?
Oh man, I know that like we went to my like grandfather's house and in his basement he had like some old books. So like there was like an old Journey into Mystery with like Thor and a couple Tales of Suspense that I got to like leaf through as like a 12-year-old. Like I don't think it was I think Batman 89 was like where I was as starting out. But I remember like when McFarlane hit the scene on Amazing Spider-Man, I was like, "Oh my god, what is this?" Like cuz it was completely different. But the book that like really changed me was The Killing Joke, 'cause I think I read it way too young, and I was like, "Oh, man, this is more than a comic book." And you go down that path where it's like, "Oh, Dark Knight Returns," and they're like, "Oh, this is something completely different." But yeah, I was a big superhero fan and, Green Lantern, Thor, I have Walt Simonson sitting up here, on my shelves, and I was a huge Walt Simonson fan, so I really followed the artwork early on as a kid, and then I moved to Chicago in 2002 and was bartending and had a few bucks, and I was like, "Oh, Graham Crackers is here," and that's when, like, Identity Crisis and Hal Jordan came back, and the writers were taking over, and I was like, oh my god, comics are not completely different, but like next level as far as the writing. And I was like, this is a great time to be in comics, and then it inspired me so much to where I ended up owning a comic book shop, you know. And now, now there's so much crazy stuff going on in the indie scene with crowdfunding and, self-publishing that it's just really cool to be part of.
Yeah, I think a lot of us read Killing Joke too young. 'Cause I remember reading that too. I was like, "Oh wait, she's naked. Oh wait, what's going on here? Oh, I should I be reading this?"
Yeah.
And then I think that, and then from there I went to Watchmen, which was like, I shouldn't be reading this, but I'm enjoying it. Um, but yeah, no, definitely there's a lot of great stuff out there that people don't. I guess maybe nowadays more people appreciate the stories that are being told in comics, where back then it was just like, oh, it's just a kid's book. But now there's a lot of great stuff out there um, that are not just for kids. And again, it's not all just superheroes, and it's not just all Marvel and DC. There's a lot of great brands out there to read. Do you have like a holy grail comic that you haven't gotten yet that you still like to get, or have you gotten your holy grail?
Oh man. I kind of shifted to like collecting art, and, so last year at New York Comic Con, I got a black suit Spider-Man sketch by Bill Sienkiewicz, and that was like really cool. And then what at Trificon, I got a nice Nova sketch by Eric Larson. And so the holy grail right now is Walt Simonson, getting a sketch by Walt Simonson, because his lines are always super long whenever I try to like meet him, and or timing kind of like doesn't match up. And the thing that's really funny is when I had the shop, I went to I it was as a shop owner, you get free tickets to San Diego Comic Con. And so I
Nice.
went out there, and I was too nervous to talk to Walt Simonson. He had no line. And now everywhere I try to find him now, he has a giant line. And I'm like, I had my opportunity way back when.
Uh-huh.
But no, Walt Simonson lives in like the area, and he always does a few shows around here. So that's the holy grail. I'm gonna make it happen, and that's what I'm excited for.
Nice, nice. Since you're putting it out there, we're manifesting it. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll see you post somewhere that you got your picture or your sketch from him, which would be awesome. Um, I know you have kids too. So like me, like my kids have watched, or through osmosis, they've like, started watching some of the stuff that I do and like some stuff. Are you like, have your kids like into this stuff too? Or are they just like casual fans about it?
No, so Disney Plus has kind of like been able to open up a lot of eyes for different things. So, they were a big fan of The Mandalorian as long as Baby Yoda was on it, Grogu. And I'm trying to think, and my daughter's 9, and we just watched the Goosebumps series
Okay.
with David Schwimmer,
Oh
and
yeah,
that was
yeah.
like her first introduction to like jump scares and stuff. So that was a lot of fun. And then we just finished Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which wasn't as friendly as I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah. Yeah, I've enjoyed. Like I said, I haven't finished it yet. But yeah, I'm like, this is. I don't know if this is for younger kids, but I think it's like a yeah.
Yeah, and that's and also, like, any aspiring writer, I would tell them to watch Bluey. Like, what they cram into a 7-minute episode and the emotional weight and storytelling-wise, like, they should teach classes on Bluey, because, like, I think I'm just blown away with what they can do storytelling-wise with that show. And, so it's been interesting because as a dad, you watch all these, like, dumb shows, not dumb shows, but, like, you watch
Yeah.
a lot of,
Yeah.
I'm trying Clifford the Big Red Dog on PBS Kids,
Yeah.
the older version, not the new version. I would just sit there in the background being like, I would pick out all the different celebrities that were doing voices. And there was other, like, I think there's another show called Nature Cat, and like all the SNL cast
Uh,
did the voices of that. And so that
yeah.
as a animation nerd and a voice actor kind of nerd, like nerding out, like I would just turn off what was on the TV and just like be like, oh, I hear all these voices. This is really cool and stuff. But but having kids, younger kids and kinda, like, doing the parenting thing and kind of like, like, "Hey, why don't you check out this stuff? Why don't you check out that stuff?" I
Yeah,
mean, it's cool. It's a lot of fun, and, so my twins are gonna be 7, and Alice is 9, and so I think on my the twins are 8, I will show them Star Wars for the first time,
nice.
like the original trilogy, because
Yeah,
I want them to really get it when Darth Vader says,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, "I am your father."
Yes.
And I don't think the young kids today are, like, spoiling Empire Strikes Back for kids, so I think there's a solid chance that I might be able to, like, hold out enough to where it might actually hit home, and I'm that's like my holy grail dad moment if I can pull that off.
That would be awesome. For me, sadly, like, because there was like there's books out and there was like, obviously Revenge of Sith and all that. So like my daughter kind of already knew that 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 was it. So when we did watch it, I mean, for me, it was still like, emotional for me, but for her, she was just like, okay, you know. But the cool thing is like now how they're re-releasing the movies out in the theaters. We went to see Return of the Jedi at the theater when it came out recently, and then that was just fun, like sitting there watching it on the big screen with them because obviously we're just watching it at home all the time. So yeah, but I mean, I would say if you get a chance, Skeleton Crew is a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, no,
Uh,
we really enjoyed Sailor Joe. That's been the fun thing is teaching kids that you have to wait for shows. And so I like when when my kids get excited about a show and then it ends and they're like, "Oh man, where's the next one?" I was like, "Well, we have to wait 7 days." And they are highly disappointed. And I was
yeah,
like, "Well, you get a little glimpse of what we had to go through."
yes, yes. There's always I always see that meme of like kids nowadays won't know that feeling of running from the kitchen to the living room because the show started and there's like no way to pause it. You just gotta your sibling is in another room. It's like it started, and you just gotta book it to the room and watch it. Um, but yeah, but no, that's great to hear. Yeah, I'm always excited when someone tells me about like what they're sharing with their kids, and then like what are going to be those cool moments for them. Um, but yeah, yeah, it's a new world, and it's a fun world too because you're reliving everything over in their eyes, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's really, I have 3 daughters and, we watched, Into the Spider-Verse. I kinda skipped through a few scenes here and there, but, like, you know, them appreciating Miles and, like, Spider-Gwen and doing all the, like, it makes me appreciate it more,
Yeah,
and I was like, "Oh, this is really connecting with people and doing things," and, chubby Peter Parker, I was like, "Oh, that's me," it fits in with me now, and I'm like, like, it's I really love that movie and what it does and how it kinda can connect a family,
yeah,
and, I that's been a really special moment, and it's kinda pushed, things in a certain direction for my kids and I as we, like, goof off and watch, other shows, and it's good that, like, I've introduced them to some things and they've liked it, as
yeah.
opposed to, like, them being like, "Oh, I don't like this," and then they, like, move on, they move on in their own direction and stuff like that, so
Yeah. Well, hopefully, because of all of this, maybe in a couple of years, your kids will have a table at the con and be selling some of the stuff that they've drawn or written by learning it from you.
it's funny because, like, Honey I have twins, Honey and Tessa, and Honey's like, "Can I work the front desk with you?" So she's very business minded. Like, she
Right.
wants to run, like, the front desk, and I was like, "Hey, a few more years, man. That front desk is all yours, man."
There you go. There you go. And then hopefully one year I'll be able to go fly out there and check it out myself because I mean this is definitely something that, like I said, I really like the smaller cons because it's more intimate, it's more personal in a way, and it's also you get to meet people that you probably wouldn't get a chance to meet because it's all there in one room. Um, Friends, we're gonna have like the links to this like in the description. So if you're in that area and you want to buy tickets, definitely click on that link, buy your tickets, go out there, bother Matt while he's like walking around and just yeah, find out more about the show. And it's March what do I have
March
it here?
15th.
March 15th. Yeah, so it's coming up soon. So definitely go out there. Matt, man, thank you very much for your time today. I mean, I wish you much success with the show. And then hopefully, there's more to come and then slowly we'll be growing it.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for the time, and I really enjoyed watching what you do on the other side of the screen with all the interviews, and I know how hard it is and what you have to do to get to that point. So I really appreciate what you do on that side with the films.
Thanks a lot, man. Thank you very much. Again, friends, go check out Indie Comics Creator Con.